About the powerful reality that individuals can change the course of history, either for better or worse. The fragility of diplomacy lies in its reliance on trust, perception, and balance. Nations may sign agreements, engage in trade, and form military alliances, but underneath all these structures rests the human element. People, not systems, guide international relations. And this means that even the smallest shift in behavior or decision making can unsettle decades of cooperation. When two powerful nations like the United States and India collaborate, they do so on the basis of shared values, common goals, and a mutual belief that both will respect each other's boundaries. But as history often shows, these foundations can be shaken by the words or actions of just one individual. A single miscalculation or provocative statement can trigger suspicion, and suspicion, once planted, often grows faster than goodwill. The U.S. India partnership has been celebrated for its resilience, yet its strength does not make it invincible. The fact that it has survived political changes, leadership turnovers, and economic crisis only highlights how carefully both sides have nurtured it. But this also means that any disruption comes with higher stakes. Imagine one Indian leader or public figure acting in a way that undermines this bond. It could be a policy that directly contradicts an agreement with the United States, or perhaps a public declaration that insults American values or interests. Such an act might seem small in the short term, but when magnified through media, political debates, and international forums, it could snowball into a crisis. What appears to be a personal choice quickly transforms into a matter of national consequence. Diplomacy is not measured only in official documents. It is constantly tested by public sentiment and political will. When one Indian disrupts the balance, it is not just the U.S. government that reacts, but also American businesses, media, and public opinion. The fallout could affect trade negotiations, technology partnerships, or defense collaborations. Investors might hesitate, leaders may delay talks, and mistrust could deepen. The fragility of diplomacy lies in this chain reaction, where one spark can ignite an entire forest of uncertainty. Both nations may try to contain the damage, but scars remain, and trust once broken takes much longer to rebuild. The lesson here is that diplomacy demands caution and foresight. A single voice, even if not representing an entire nation, can be perceived as symbolic of the country itself. This is why governments, diplomats, and influential figures must recognize the weight of their words and actions. What they say and do is not just personal, it becomes a reflection of national will. In the context of U.S.-India relations, one wrong move by an Indian could tilt the balance, reminding us that no alliance, no matter how strong, is immune to disruption. The fragility of diplomacy is both a warning and a call for greater responsibility from those who shape the narratives between nations. One of the most striking aspects of global politics is how much influence an individual can exert, even when two nations appear to be bound by strong agreements and mutual interests. In the case of U.S.-India relations, the role of one Indian, whether a politician, a business magnate, or a public figure, can significantly alter the trajectory of cooperation. International partnerships are not merely about governments. They are also about the faces and voices that symbolize a nation's character on the global stage. When a single person steps forward with authority or prominence, their words and choices are amplified, often carrying consequences far beyond what was intended. This magnification of influence demonstrates that in the arena of global diplomacy, the power of one individual cannot be underestimated. Consider how leaders have historically shaped the image of their countries abroad. A strong statement, either in support of or in opposition to another nation, can reframe how millions of people perceive a partnership. If one Indian in a position of influence were to take an anti-American stance, even as a personal opinion, it could quickly be seized by media outlets, political opponents, and international observers as an official reflection of India's broader policy. The United States, being highly sensitive to signals in global affairs, may interpret such an act as more than a passing comment. This creates a domino effect where policy debates, trade discussions, and even defense collaborations can suddenly be overshadowed by mistrust. The reality is that individuals in positions of power hold a symbolic weight that ordinary citizens do not. A business leader who withdraws investments, a government official who drafts a controversial policy, or a cultural figure who voices criticism of America's role in global affairs can become a focal point for strained relations. The influence of one Indian is not limited to direct government action. It extends to shaping perceptions in a way that can either reinforce trust or break it down. In today's interconnected world, where every statement can reach millions within minutes, the potential for disruption has multiplied. At the same time, the impact of an individual is not confined to negative outcomes. Just as one person can weaken ties, another can strengthen them. A visionary leader or influential figure who advocates for closer U.S. India cooperation can become a bridge of understanding, creating momentum for stronger diplomatic, cultural, and economic ties. This dual nature of individual power highlights why nations place such importance on the conduct of their representatives and influential voices. They know that in the delicate art of diplomacy, one person's actions can echo across continents. The significance of individual power in global politics lies in its ability to shape the broader narrative. The actions of one Indian, intentional or not, can alter the way the United States perceives its relationship with India. This power is both a privilege and a responsibility, reminding us that international relations are not abstract forces, but living connections influenced by the choices of individuals. When personal ambition overtakes the broader vision of collective progress, the consequences are rarely contained to the individual alone. In the arena of international relations, such ambition can ripple across borders and redefine partnerships between powerful nations. The relationship between the United States and India, built on years of dialogue, negotiation, and compromise, represents more than just political agreements. It reflects a shared pursuit of economic growth, democratic values, and global influence. Yet, if one Indian, motivated by personal pride, political gain, or short-term advantage, takes a course of action that disregards this shared vision, the damage can extend far beyond their own reputation. It can undermine the stability of bilateral ties and erode the trust that leaders, businesses, and citizens on both sides have worked so hard to establish. Ambition in itself is not inherently negative. In fact, it often drives innovation, leadership, and progress. But when ambition becomes short-sighted, focused on personal recognition, electoral victories, or immediate financial gain, it turns into a destructive force. Imagine an Indian leader who chooses to challenge U.S. policies not as part of a larger strategy, but as a way to gain domestic popularity. While such a move might strengthen their image at home, it could create a diplomatic rift abroad, leaving long-term damage in its wake. The United States might interpret this act as hostility, prompting retaliatory measures in trade, defense cooperation, or diplomatic dialogue. What began as one individual's pursuit of personal benefit transforms into a source of tension between two nations. Personal ambition can also manifest in the corporate sphere. A powerful business figure could make decisions that contradict collaborative agreements with U.S. companies, either for profit or to gain influence within India's domestic market. Such moves might secure short-term success at the cost of international partnerships that sustain long-term economic stability. The perception of India as a reliable partner can weaken, and once that perception shifts, it takes years of careful rebuilding to restore. This demonstrates that ambition unchecked by foresight can have consequences far beyond the personal or national level. It can alter global alliances. The destructive potential of ambition is also intensified by the modern world's interconnectedness. In the age of social media and instant communication, a single speech, policy, or controversial act can spread globally within moments. What might once have been contained as a local event now becomes international news, reshaping narratives in Washington, New Delhi, and beyond. The international spotlight magnifies mistakes born of ambition and often portrays them as deliberate strategies, further deepening mistrust. Yet, the most troubling aspect of personal ambition is that it often blinds individuals to the bigger picture. When someone is too focused on their own rise, they forget that their actions carry the weight of an entire nation's reputation. The U.S.-India relationship is not just about governments, but about the expectations of billions who rely on this partnership for opportunities, security, and growth. If one person's ambition jeopardizes that relationship, the cost is borne not only by leaders, but also by ordinary people who see doors closing in trade, education, and cultural exchange. This makes personal ambition, when unchecked, one of the most dangerous forces in global diplomacy. The ripple effect of mistrust is one of the most dangerous forces in diplomacy, because once trust is shaken between nations, its consequences rarely remain confined to a single event or issue. In the case of U.S.-India relations, even a seemingly minor act by one Indian figure can trigger suspicions that spread across political, economic, and cultural spheres. Trust is the invisible glue that holds international partnerships together. Without it, agreements lose their meaning, promises are doubted, and cooperation turns into cautious calculation. What begins as one individual's misstep can grow into a wave of uncertainty that reshapes how two nations view each other. Consider how one controversial policy decision, business move, or statement could set this process in motion. If an Indian official or influential figure introduces an action that appears hostile or dishonest toward the United States, the initial reaction may be diplomatic concern or media scrutiny. But the damage does not stop there. Policymakers in Washington might begin to question India's reliability as a strategic partner. Businesses may start hesitating to invest in Indian markets, fearing instability or unfavorable conditions. Even cultural exchanges and educational programs can be affected when mistrust creates doubt about intentions on either side. The chain reaction unfolds in multiple directions, multiplying the impact of what may have begun as a single spark. The nature of mistrust is that it breeds quickly and feeds on speculation. If one questionable act is left unaddressed, it encourages people to look for further signs of betrayal. Suddenly, old disagreements resurface. Past conflicts are reinterpreted and suspicions deepen. For example, trade disputes that were once manageable can appear more threatening. Military collaborations can be viewed with skepticism, and even humanitarian or environmental cooperation may be clouded by doubt. What was once a stable, multi-dimensional partnership begins to look fragile because mistrust colors every interaction. This ripple effect also spreads to the public sphere. Media coverage can amplify narratives of betrayal or dishonesty, influencing how ordinary citizens in both nations perceive each other. When the public begins to see the other country as unreliable or antagonistic, pressure builds on governments to take a harder stance. Leaders may respond with defensive policies, sanctions, or rhetoric that further escalates the situation. The mistrust that started with one act thus expands into a broader environment of hostility, leaving little room for dialogue or compromise. Repairing such damage is far more difficult than preventing it. Once trust is broken, both nations must work harder to prove their sincerity, often requiring new agreements, concessions, or years of reassurance. In the meantime, opportunities are lost. Opportunities for innovation, trade growth, and joint global leadership. The ripple effect of mistrust reminds us that diplomacy is not only about big decisions, but also about the careful handling of every interaction. Every statement and every agreement. A single miscalculation can grow into a cycle of doubt that sets back progress for years, showing how fragile even the strongest alliances can be. While the actions of one individual can trigger damage in diplomatic ties, the responsibility of repairing and sustaining relationships falls on the collective shoulders of many. U.S. India relations are not built on the decisions of one person alone. They are shaped by governments, diplomats, businesses, cultural exchanges, and ordinary citizens who engage across borders. When mistrust or disruption arises, it is the collective responsibility of all these actors to ensure that the bond is not permanently broken. The ability to rebuild trust lies in recognizing that while individuals can create cracks, only a united effort can restore the foundation. When tensions emerge between the two nations, the first layer of responsibility often rests on diplomatic channels. Skilled diplomats are trained to interpret conflicts, manage disagreements, and create opportunities for dialogue, even in moments of strain. They provide the bridge through which misunderstandings can be clarified and trust can begin to be repaired. But diplomacy cannot succeed in isolation. Leaders on both sides must make conscious choices to prioritize long-term cooperation over short-term retaliation. They must resist the temptation of scoring political points at the expense of international harmony and instead commit to the broader vision of a stable partnership. Businesses also play a crucial role in maintaining collective responsibility. Economic ties between the United States and India are vast, ranging from technology and pharmaceuticals to defense and energy. When political relations become strained, business leaders often act as anchors of stability, continuing to collaborate and demonstrating that cooperation is mutually beneficial. Their ongoing partnerships can serve as a reminder that, despite political disagreements, The two nations are deeply interconnected in ways that cannot easily be undone. By maintaining dialogue and investment, businesses ensure that the economic bond remains strong enough to withstand temporary political storms. Cultural and educational exchanges add another dimension to this collective effort. Students studying abroad, their artists collaborating across borders, and professionals engaging in global networks all serve as ambassadors of goodwill. Their relationships create human connections that are difficult to sever, even when official ties face challenges. In times of mistrust, these people-to-people connections act as a counterweight, preserving a sense of shared values and mutual respect. Collective responsibility is reflected in their actions as they continue to build bridges that governments alone cannot sustain. Equally important is the role of public perception. Citizens of both nations influence how governments act by shaping narratives and expectations. If the public remains committed to the idea of U.S. India friendship, leaders are pressured to prioritize reconciliation over conflict. Collective responsibility means that individuals, communities, and organizations must resist allowing one disruptive act to define the entire relationship. Instead, they must see beyond the damage caused by one person and work together to reinforce the ties that unite them. Collective responsibility ensures resilience. While one Indian may harm the relationship through ambition, error, or provocation, the combined actions of many can outweigh that harm. By aligning diplomacy, economics, culture, and public sentiment, both nations can demonstrate that no single individual has the power to permanently destroy what has been built over decades. This shared commitment becomes the true safeguard of U.S.-India relations. Just as one person has the ability to disrupt the harmony of international relations, another individual holds the potential to rebuild bridges and restore trust. In the context of U.S.-India relations, this truth carries enormous significance. History is full of examples where leaders, diplomats, or visionaries have stepped forward during times of crisis to reverse hostility and open pathways toward cooperation. The same principle applies here. While one Indian may have contributed to the weakening of ties, another Indian could become the voice of reason, the architect of reconciliation, and the embodiment of hope for a renewed partnership. This duality of human influence reminds us that relationships between nations are never static. They are dynamic, evolving, and always open to repair. The possibility of reconciliation rests first on dialogue. When one individual damages ties, mistrust often grows quickly, leaving both nations cautious and defensive. At such a point, a leader or representative who is committed to open communication can begin to change the narrative. By initiating discussions, clarifying intentions, and acknowledging mistakes, they can reduce tensions and reestablish a sense of sincerity. Reconciliation does not demand perfection, but it does require honesty and humility, qualities that a strong Indian leader or influencer could embody in order to restore balance with the United States. Another powerful tool of reconciliation is vision. A person who looks beyond the immediate damage and envisions what the U.S.-India relationship could achieve in the future is well positioned to inspire both sides. This vision might include deeper cooperation in technology, stronger defense alliances, or a commitment to addressing global challenges like climate change and poverty. By highlighting shared goals, one Indian can remind both nations that their destinies are intertwined and that unity serves a greater purpose than division. A compelling vision has the power to turn hostility into opportunity. Equally important is the role of symbolic gestures. In diplomacy, actions often speak louder than words. An Indian figure who takes bold steps toward reconciliation, whether through cultural outreach, economic partnerships, or humanitarian efforts, can demonstrate sincerity and rebuild confidence. Symbolism carries weight in international affairs, as it signals intention not only to governments, but also to citizens. Such gestures create a ripple effect of positivity, gradually replacing mistrust with renewed faith. Reconciliation also requires courage. The individual who attempts to repair ties must be willing to face criticism at home and abroad. Nationalism and pride often make it difficult to advocate for compromise, as it may appear like weakness. Yet true leadership is measured not by the ability to fuel division, but by the ability to unite in the face of conflict. If one Indian accepts this responsibility, they could transform the perception of U.S. India relations, reminding the world that dialogue and peace are always stronger than discord. The story of U.S. India relations, therefore, does not need to end with destruction. One Indian may have harmed it, but another has the power to heal it. Through dialogue, vision, symbolic gestures, and courage, reconciliation can become reality. The hope for stronger ties remains alive as long as there are individuals willing to step forward and lead the way toward harmony. The relationship between the United States and India is one of the most strategic partnerships in the modern world, but like all bonds, it is vulnerable to disruption. The idea that one Indian could weaken or even destroy these ties reflects the fragile nature of diplomacy. Where individual choices carry global consequences, yet while personal ambition, mistrust, and missteps may damage cooperation, they cannot erase decades of shared values, economic interdependence, and mutual goals. What one individual may break, the collective effort of many can rebuild. Diplomats, leaders, businesses, and citizens all play a role in safeguarding this partnership. And history shows that reconciliation is always possible when there is vision and sincerity. The future of U.S.-India relations does not rest on one person alone. It rests on the shared determination of both nations to overcome challenges and move forward together with resilience and hope.